This is Animal Health Insider, where we bring you the real news, real insight, real voices from inside the industry.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Animal Health Insider. I'm Julie Lawless, and I'm joined with the insiders, Beatrice Voss and Joe Harvey. Hi, guys.
Hi there.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. It's good to see you. We've returned from Anti-EU, which is Casaco's animal health, nutrition, technology, innovation show. It's one of the big shows of the year, and we had the opportunity to record interviews with some amazing folks at that show. So yeah, wasn't it really? It was very good. One of the people that we talked to is Laurie Hueneke, and if you know Laurie Hueneke, you know Laurie is all about public policy, trade. She built the team at Merck Animal Health from the ground up. She runs public policy and government relations. She's got a great global team there of folks. And I thought that was a really interesting conversation because we don't often hear about trade, and we hear a lot about regulatory, but there's a whole other side with trade and government relations. So she had some interesting things to say, don't you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Joe, you first, right?
She's also a Feather in Her Cap award winner, which I think we pointed out in when we spoke to her, as is Beatrice.
We had two at the same time, didn't we?
Yeah. Yeah, she stands out because of her personality, but also because her job role is quite specific and potentially quite unique in animal health, because she's looking at regulatory affairs, but she's also quite open, and we got to speak to her about it, which is really cool. But I think regulatory affairs and what's going on geopolitically at the moment is all very pertinent. But actually, on top of that, the conference that we attended in London kicked off on that kind of topic. We had the head of the FDA's CVM and the head of the biggest animal health company in the world interviewing each other kind of on the stage about US FDA regulatory reform. So the fact that Laurie was one of the first people we spoke to after that was good, and she had some unique viewpoints on what happened on stage and what's happening geopolitically at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really interesting what she had to say, and she works, of course, in a very impactful and more important area. And I mean, Laurie pointed out that it's not, geopolitics and policies that impact our industry, it's not new, right? It's always been there. We are a highly regulated industry, and with that come policy making that stands behind those regulations. But it's somewhat moving from being more of a regulatory constraint to really becoming a commercial driver or a commercial hurdle, depending on where you sit, right? If you look at US tariffs and the massive impact they have on trade, also if you look at sustainability policies, which can be a real tailwind for certain products, AgTech, EID, tax, and those things that are becoming mandatory in many parts of the world, that can be a hurdle for farmers, and given the cost that are associated with this. So it's really it's accelerating, and I think it's becoming more and more impactful for the industry in many ways. I thought it was also interesting to hear that the group of stakeholders is ever expanding, right? I mean, that's of course the industry. There are the regulators and the policymakers. There's academia and scientists who impact policy making to some extent. There are politicians who have their own agendas, maybe somewhat apart from all of the above. And of course, there are consumers who want safe and affordable and nutritious food, right? So a lot of different interests to navigate, and I think that's really why people like Laurie are so important for our industry.
That's right, and I think you're right, Beatrice. Like, certainly, this has always been a concern. We've seen, market access is key to getting products, into countries, and the safe trade of food. Like these are foundational policies that have always been working in the background, but it seems like this has really come to the forefront, I think, with recent geopolitical realignments that are happening. Tariffs have always been there. They've always been, this group has always been working with tariffs, but it to me, it seems like there is a gap maybe that's widening between sort of science-based standards and political decision making. And that is something that has to be discussed at the C-suite level, because it's really difficult to make your forecasts and your plans when you're not even really sure how a country may or may not allow your products in. Yes. So I think her job, and she's doing, not only for Merck, but, as she tells us, she's working at the Health for Animals level, and all of the major strategics do, really on, these issues that aren't competitive issues, but as an industry, they help us all by harmonizing regulations and making sure that products can move freely. So such an interesting, I think, function that people just don't really know much about or think about. And I don't know, maybe they like it that way, cloak and dagger government.
Well, it's not perceived to be part of innovation, new products, or M&A, which are all the big headlines of all the financial results, but it is critical to the industry, and it seems like it's becoming more and more important. But I think that's maybe just kind of a side effect of kind of the industry growing up, as it were. It's grown a lot in size over the last decade, and that's maybe with Elanco and Zoetis and other companies being public entities. It's kind of the position and the reputation of animal health is enhanced, so therefore it is put under more scrutiny, and but on the other hand, it's got more of a base to argue its political viewpoint or the needs of the industry, which Health for Animals does, and all the big companies, and Laurie at Merck Animal Health as well. But it'll be interesting to see if conflict, tariffs, what impact that has on the industry, and whether we get to find out those impacts. Because so far, it seems like the animal health industry is small enough to navigate issues. Merck always talks about how broad its portfolio is across species and countries, that if there's a problem in the Middle East that impacts its products in one species, it kind of looks at another part of its portfolio to spur growth in another region or with another species. So the biggest sort of outside hindrance, I suppose you could call it, that has impacted the industry was COVID, and that actually had a big benefit for the companion animal segments. And so far, it seems like tariffs, conflicts haven't had that much effect on the sort of trajectory of the industry, and I suppose that's down to the companies themselves navigating that, and people like Laurie helping them sort of fight their corner and have the voice of the industry heard.
That's right. That's exactly right.
True.
So with that, let's hop over and take a listen to what Laurie has to say about how I think animal health is no longer, we're only, as you said, Joe, just focusing on science and innovation. It's increasingly being shaped by global policy and geopolitics. So let's go take a listen. Thanks, guys. We have, I'm going to say, a special guest and something that's very special. We have 2 Feather in Her Cap winners with Laurie Hueneke from Merck
and Beatrice Voss. So we're excited to be here with you guys. And I'm super excited. I know I've been bugging you for quite a while to sit down and talk with us because, well, I love trade policy. I love talking about trade policy, not as much as you.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm very popular at cocktails. Yes.
yes, you are. You get asked all kinds of questions. And we have a lot of questions to hit you with. I'm going to have Joe start it off for us today.
Okay. So one of the things I found fascinating about you is your role in the industry, because I don't see many other people with this position in the industry. So I wondered if you could just take us through what your role is, how big your team is, and kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, sure, Joe, and good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we were able to make it work. I was brought on to Merck about 11 years ago to develop the public policy and government relations team. I think the company recognized that we needed to be more front and center in shaping the external environment, and that's essentially what we do. Right? We work with stakeholders, policymakers, others inside and outside of the industry to advocate for science-based rules and regulations. And so, I often tell my team, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, Joe. And you certainly don't want to be on the menu. Okay. Listen, these decisions, these policies are being made with or without us, right? So what we try to do is bring that informed position, that informed information, whether it's technical or scientific or pragmatic, to the discussion, and hopefully and work to shape the outcome for the benefit of our customers and our business.
That's really great. I think you have a special lens on this. So if anyone follows you on LinkedIn, I know, because we do, because we love the suits to boots. You say suits to boots, and it all has to do with being a sixth generation Iowa farmer. You're farming, you're living it. What's it like to take that into policy rooms all around the world?
Well, I think any time, right, you can come with firsthand knowledge of something, whether it's a producer or having been in a manufacturing side, or any firsthand knowledge to those discussions that you're helping to inform the outcome, you become more credible. And when I show up, when I think about policies and issues, I think because of my background, being raised on a diverse family farm in Iowa, my husband and I now have a cow-calf operation in Iowa, you bring that pragmatic lens, right? So thinking about not only does it look good on paper or the headline, but is it actually going to work in practice? Right? And thinking about, if I was that producer, how would I respond to that? Is that something that fits within my operation, my challenges, whether it's labor or land or genetics or whatever that is? And so really bringing that perspective, I think, gives me a good lens on what's going on.
Interesting. Was there a moment in your life when you knew that government affairs was your thing?
There was actually, Beatrice. So I was bit with the policy bug when I interned with the USDA Foreign Agricultural Service in college. So I was on track to be a vet, just like everybody else, doing the hard work, putting the time in. And when I spent that summer in Washington, I saw there were all these really good people trying to make really good decisions, but they didn't have that perspective, right? They were coming from a good place, but they didn't have the perspective that I had from being on the farm, having that scientific background. And so I knew that was my calling, that I could help inform those decisions. And it was all around science-based policy, working predominantly on US-EU ag policy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, for those who aren't versed in the trade policy world, I was wondering, just very generally, why does trade matter in the animal health industry? And maybe could you explain, if policy is not science-based, what are the actual implications on farm? What might happen?
So trade policy matters for our industry and our customers. A lot of the veterinary medicines that we bring to market require the ability for our producers to use them and then either be able to export their products or move their animals around the globe. And so it's very important that we ensure that there are science-based standards for our veterinary medicines, and that we're working with our producer, veterinarian, pet industry stakeholders to build those coalitions to ensure those science-based conditions for trade and trade policy.
And if those policies aren't science-based, what could happen?
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing, right? Because science really creates that level playing field. When things are based on science, there's consistency, there's predictability, there is assurance that by using that animal health medicine, that you are then going to have access to that market, whether domestic and international. And oftentimes, for our livestock producing customers, parts of the beauty of trade, right, is those products go where the highest value is. So oftentimes that carcass isn't going just to one destination.
So Laura, if you could wave a magic wand and remove one trade barrier, which one would it be? And you're not allowed to say Trump tariffs.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's the obvious one.
If I could wave a magic wand, wow. I mean, to me, it would be all about innovation. It's got to be about innovation, because when there are barriers to our ability to move products around the globe, the inability of our customers to move products, of our inability of pets to move because they've had a certain vaccine or something to that effect, I would work to remove those non-tariff barriers to trade.
You mentioned tariff, so that brings me to my question, which is about the geopolitical environment. We're hearing about it every day. You've told me that 2024 was the year of elections, and there were more elections than we've ever seen around the world. Is it different today than it's been in the past, or have you always sort of dealt with these things when you're in a trade policy and government relations role?
Yeah, so, I mean, trade is not new. Tariffs are not new. And levers of trade have long been a tool and follow geopolitical alignment. They're a tool of diplomacy. And I think we're hearing more about them because, the U.S. is being more overt, whereas in the past of using the tariff tool, whereas in the past it's been generally a low barrier to entry market with low levels of tariffs and low non-tariff trade barriers. So it's definitely a change and a realignment within a global trading system that the U.S. has historically helped establish and enforced.
So we're slowly coming to an end of the interview, and I'd like to end with a more personal question. Is there something, or can you share something about you that's maybe a bit surprising, something that's not on your CV that our listeners would like to hear about it?
Oh, I don't know.
Surprise.
I know I knew there was a surprise question coming. I didn't know what it was. Something you may not know is that I got my certificate in order to marry some of my friends.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Amazing. That is good to know.
So yes.
That might come in very handy.
Oh, no, I'm retired.
Okay, so for listeners and viewers, is there one current global trade policy trend that is happening that they can take away? If there's one thing that they need to think about right now that's happening in the world, from your point of view, what would it be?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm seeing, that we're seeing in the industry, which is quite astounding coming out of all the discussions on antimicrobial resistance, is the anti-vax and some of the sensitivities to vaccinating animals. You're seeing this shift of this issue from human health to animal health. And so that can have negative implications for the vaccination, the health of our food-producing animals, but also our companion animals, right? That many of us live with in our homes every day. And so seeing that shift from human health to animal health is one trend that I'm watching very closely.
So it's not just pets. You're saying also with livestock too. It's a trend in livestock.
Thinking about the hesitancy to vaccinate for whatever reason, whether it's the vaccine, as we get new innovations and platforms coming through, sometimes there's just a hesitation, both from the regulators and how they regulate new platforms and medicines, but also in how producers or pet owners may or may not use those products.
And do we see bills coming through related to this, or, regulations around the world? Or is it just a general feeling that people have around vaccination?
We're actually seeing quite a bit of bills at the U.S. state level. We had a very heavy vaccine policy agenda in 2025, and we expect it to keep up in 2026. The U.S. state level is not unique. We're also seeing it in other parts of the world. And again, regulators need to have the information in order to figure out the regulatory pathways for the new innovations as well.
And that's where it's important, I think, as an industry, to have trade policy experts, government relations experts that work together at AHI, Health for Animals. So you're working in those areas across the industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really important, right, to work with our trade association partners in the animal health industry, both at the global level, but also at the national level, because issues can start at a national level and then spread, right? And so we need to keep an eye out for what's happening at the national level.
Well, thank you, Laurie. Thanks for joining us. I think this was, it's just so interesting to understand what's kind of going on back behind the scenes. This stuff just doesn't happen, right? There are a lot of people that are working on this, and we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.